Hi, it's Kyle Stahl with Stahl Agronomy, and besides trying to get into the oranges shirt competition today, I'm out here to show you a little bit about what I look for when we start looking at stalk quality late in the season. So the first thing we do when we do a late season stalk integrity walk through a field is we check for what we call the push test. So we're going to push these plants and see how well they stand. The whole point is to push the plants about a 30-degree angle and see which ones kind of kink over. And we'll have to go back and look at those after we get done. So the next step for us is to really go out and do a pinch test after we do the push test. So the pinch test is just starting to squeeze some of these stalks back and seeing, I can push that one or pinch that one really easily. Just seeing how resilient these things are once we start pushing them. There's one over here, was really spongy. Once we peel all the leaves back here, we can start to see a lot of black showing up on the outside of the stalk. Once we start seeing these black regions, that really means that there's stalk anthracnose starting to show up in the stalk. And once we split it open, you can kind of see, actually this is actually really good. You can see black starting to form kind of along the nodes. We're starting to see some sponginess and stringiness in between the nodes. Once I start seeing that, that's when we really want to start looking at maybe potentially getting a field off. The other disease we'll be looking at this time of year, and we've seen a few fields with it, is gibberella stalk rot. Gibberella will form a pinkish region on the outside of the stalk. Once you split open, the nodes will actually be pink. You'll start seeing it get spread up and down the nodes. So the field I'm actually in is one of our tar spot fields this year. It got tar spot fairly early. We're sitting in between 25 to probably 27, 28% moisture right now. Ideally, we want to be at least 24 before we start going out and taking corn off. But push test, we're in that 30% to 40% range of stalks actually kicking over. When we squeeze test, I would say we're at 50 to 60% of stalks that are actually taking that squeeze test. So for me, that means we're basically simulating a 30 to 40 mile an hour wind event, and we're at probably 30 to 50% of these stalks having issues. So we want to try to get this off as soon as possible. You got to think with tar spot, we're progressing about a week ahead of normal. We're already 2 weeks ahead of normal. So our normal corn harvest starts usually in mid-October. Right now we're mid-September to late September. So it's pretty much time, as soon as we can get into some of these fields. Once we test the moisture, if the moisture is halfway decent, we should start getting this stuff off. So as we're kind of looking at bean harvest kind of starting soon, if you can't get into beans, you've got a few fields with tar spot on them, that might be something you want to pay attention to. We don't really think this tar spot is leading to stalk deterioration in itself. What it really is doing is drying those stalks out, and it's kind of showing up some of the issues we're seeing with other diseases coming in, like gibberella and anthracnose. So tar spot is not making the plants go over, we don't think, in itself, but yeah, these other diseases are just getting progressed a little bit faster, and it seems like it's just exacerbating that issue. So I would be walking your fields right now. If you got any kind of fields you're concerned about, I would get a harvest plan together. Ideally, we like to do a very efficient harvest and work an area and then move on, but it might be the year where we actually go out and just take a few fields off, especially if we see any kind of wind in the forecast. So just keep walking your fields.